Hello, my name is Shelby Trickle, and this is my presentation over considerations for ELL evaluations. So, if it'll go. Okay, so to start off, let's talk about dialect. Dialect is a form of a language which is peculiar to a specific region or social group. So, this is something that can be kind of difficult for teachers to understand if a student is using like a word incorrectly or if they're using it in a different dialect. That might be, like I said, hard for them to like understand, like if teachers are not aware of this. The most common dialect is Black English, um, and this is different from mainstream English because they pronounce things differently. So they soften the R and they weaken the final consonants and so on. Also, I forgot to mention that different types of dialect would include like phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. So moving back to like English. So this is something that like teachers just should be aware of. Their pronunciation is a lot different. Um, they still um, they still know a lot about of the same words, but it's going to be how they pronounce them that's going to be a little bit different. Um, it could also be their understanding of the words. So the chapter, something that kind of caught my eye in the chapter is that it's different than slang. So slang is like what students use today. So like I've used slang, I know, and this is completely different than like dialect because the students understand like the English language. They just kind of use this slang maybe just for fun or just because it's a trend. And so they would not struggle though on a test because they still know the words, but they're just using slang just like I said because it's something that is like a trend or something that just started happening that students started to use. Um, So this is just some information about dialect that I found to be important and that teachers should be aware of. So now let's discuss about how dialect impacts assessment approaches in oral language. So they can definitely impact the understanding. So as a future educator, this is something that should be taken seriously um, because different cultures could have words that mean different things. So I might be giving a test and a student could be doing bad on it, and I might not know why or understand why, but they might not be understanding my directions or vocabulary that I use, and that could be the reason. And they could even not understand the questions I'm asking because they don't have, they speak a different language, or maybe their first language isn't English. So this also includes comprehension. Um, so basically, like the question would be like, are students understanding what is being asked of them? If a student is reading a passage and must answer questions that go with the passage, they might not understand it. Like as mentioned, like they might not be able to comprehend it. Um, this can be an issue for students with any type of dialect. So I am observing a classroom, and there is a student whose first language is Spanish. And so he does struggle a little bit with like directions or doing assignments. And this particular student has accommodations on assessments that involve reading the directions and they are explained to him in a way he can understand, since, as mentioned, he does struggle with the English language. So I just think this is why it is so important that teachers know if the students understand what they are being asked of. The impact also includes how the test is given to them. This could impact if a student is able to test on their own, or if they need a para to help, or a teacher to read it to them. Um, if they need to do verbal answering or just any kind of thing like that. That can also impact how they test. The student I mentioned has a para that helps them comprehend and understand what is expected of them to do. Vocabulary is also impacted because some words could not be in their vocabulary. So for students that have English as a second language, they might have totally different vocabulary, such as the student who speaks Spanish as his first language. It is important when testing those students that all words they may not understand are explained to them. So that's why this student who speaks Spanish as their first language, they have that teacher or interpreter that helps them understand the words that they may not understand. And they can ask them questions like, oh, I don't get this word. Oh, they can go to this teacher that can help them. So, next, let's talk about interventions for English learners. One of the interventions that could be used is using bilingual education services. So this could be involved with providing ELL aides, ESL teachers, and just any people that would be able to speak their language or help them out a little bit. So any resources involved, ESL, any type of resources that the districts have for ESL could definitely benefit students. Another intervention that could be used is utilizing small group or partner activities to help promote modeling in language. So if you put a student who is an ELL into a group of students that are fluent English language speakers, they are able to hear those tones and mannerisms in the dialect, and that is being spoken by the peers. So they are able to learn some certain words from their peers. They are more likely to imitate it if they see that their peers are doing it. It also helps with strengthening that skill and the ability to change the dialect they are speaking. It will make them more fluent with English speaking abilities. So this is one strategy that I actually have observed in a classroom. The teacher utilized group work, and the student speaks Spanish as a fluent language, they were put with students who were fluent with English, and that student was able to build on their English and improve. And I actually have noticed a difference in the student and how he spoke English. And so it just proves that this actually really works for certain students. Another intervention includes task familiarity. This involves making sure that when asking students to do something, they know what to do. It includes explaining things and ensuring instructions can be understood. This could also include letting them choose their own book to read when teaching students about like main idea or other parts of reading. Because I actually did an assignment or a lesson, and I chose to do main idea. And my teacher wanted me to work with this student who spoke the Spanish. And when I did this assignment, I provided a variety of options for him to choose. Um, and it was ones that I knew he would probably be able to read a little bit better. And so providing him that choice, it made him more confident in what I was teaching him. So another intervention could also involve taking a look at the learning environment. If the environment is not interesting to them, so like for example, if a student comes into the classroom and is an ELL student, something as simple as demonstrating what you're doing as you're wanting things done could make a big difference. So if I were to say, everyone grab your flashcards, well, if that student doesn't know what flashcards are, they won't be able to do that task. So basically what you need to do is when you say grab your flashcards, actually, like the teacher should actually like grab the flashcards, hold them up, and show them. So then the student's like, oh, I know what that is now. So then they are able to actually do that task for you. So basically, you need to model what you want them to do. This could go for also like a journal. Like if they don't know what a journal is, you need to model it and show it to them. So another intervention includes offering assessments in their native language. Teachers could provide the option of both or combine them. So this option allows students to feel more comfortable and more confident that they could do an assessment or reading or whatever they are trying to do. Uh, Using interpreters is another intervention. The interpreter is another. The interpreter could explain the instructions to the learner and interpret what the teacher is saying in class. Um, and so that I think could really help them so they can keep on track of what's going on. This is great for all students. Or sorry, dynamic testing is also another great intervention. It's good for all students. It involves providing different ways of testing. So like you could start with one unit doing like a small 10 question quiz, and then the next one could be like a test. And then after the test, you might do a project. And this is great because it changes up the different assessments. The ELL learners can benefit because they are receiving different types of directions. They are learning that a quiz is a short assessment. Oh, the test is over the entire thing that we're learning, like the entire unit. Or a project is something that I have to create. These are just some of the interventions I found, but there is actually so many out there that I actually never realized. Next, let's talk about why students are culturally, linguistically diverse, sometimes over or under-identified in special education services. So a reason for this is that there's not a lot of assessments available for determining if a student has a language disorder and how it is impacting their disability. So like oftentimes these tests are very limited in the language that the students may speak. So tests really need to be in a student's native language, otherwise teachers are pretty much discriminating against those students because the students are not able to become successful like the other students because they don't understand what they're reading or what they're looking at. Unless a student speaks English, there is not a lot of options for students to take tests. Another reason is that teachers may not be able to speak the student's first language. So you can't have an English-speaking administrator for a student who speaks Spanish because when the student has to take a test, the teacher provides directions that the student is not able to understand. That's kind of similarly as mentioned as the test, there's not very many assessments. So like the language can cause the students to mess up and on the assessment because they do not understand the answers. Another reason is that educators might overlook errors on account of dialect differences and miss the dialect. By doing this, the student is then not properly provided interventions and or other things that they may need in return. And in return, they are then becoming behind in their class. Another reason is that administrators may assume that a student is struggling because they say words differently. So an accent could be an example. So if a student says sent, but they don't say the T at the end, that teacher may think, oh, the student is needing services because the student is not understanding that what the sound T is. And then they may be over-identified because they know what the word is. It's just they say it a little bit differently. And then on the other hand, it could be the whole other way around. As mentioned about students becoming overlooked, that they may not actually know what the T sound is. So that is another way that it could become a problem. So that's why it's so important